When you've already struck gold with something, it's inevitable that you'll probably try to do it again. I mean, you find two great complementary ingredients, well, you make as many meals as possible out of them. So if a studio finds two actors who really work together on screen, they will try to cram them into everything. They'll do it again, and sometimes again and again and again. Of course, movie making is not as simple as that, something the following flicks all found out the hard way. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 great movie duos who reunited and made garbage. Number 10, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. The good, Joe vs. the Volcano, Sleepless in Seattle, and You've Got Mail. The bad, Ithaca. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan have enjoyed incredible and very charming screen chemistry together over the years, with the twin romantic classics of Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail really representing the apex of their shared journey. But they were also great in their first movie together as well, Joe vs. the Volcano, which really set out how well they worked together. Hanks' affable everyman spirit, even when playing a corporate pirate in You've Got Mail, bounced well off Ryan's more neurotic, chaotic characters, and they appeared made for each other. But then time wasn't really fair on Ryan, whose star faded as Hanks became even bigger, and even her attempt to recapture some of the old magic with her directorial debut Ithaca, which reunited the pair as husband and wife, also failed. Sadly, there's no silver lining here, it's just a dud, and there's not enough of their sparkle to redeem its glaring faults. Number 9, Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn. The good, Swingers. The bad, Couples Retreat. Long before Jon Favreau was a beloved director and Vince Vaughn was generating column inches as one of the more notorious leading men in Hollywood, Swingers put them firmly on the map. The real-life friends took Favreau's excellent funny script, including some roles specifically written for other friends, and turned it into one of the coolest comedies of the 90s. And it all hinged on their chemistry together, which has sort of like a proto-Fight Club bromance vibe about it. Both are great in their roles too, which is more than can be said of the result of their reunion in 2009's awful Couples Retreat. Stunningly, this was also written by Favreau as well as Vaughn this time around, but it fundamentally misses all of the beats that made Swingers so great. And the switch of Favreau from lovable loser to arrogant womanizer is just awfully misguided. Number 8, Jason Biggs and Mina Savari. The good, American Pie. The bad, Loser. Now, strictly speaking, Jason Biggs and Mina Savari didn't really interact a great deal in the American Pie movies, because she's restricted to being a quote-unquote choir geek, and he's too busy prematurely ejaculating over exchange students. But they were both still big parts of why American Pie was so successful and why it dialed so hard into the zeitgeist of the time, and of course launched a million copycats. It's no surprise then that Loser, the 2000 film by clueless and Look Who's Talking director Amy Heckerling, was heavily marketed as a reunion of American Pie key players, with Biggs once more playing an underdog and Savari a partly misguided romantic interest. It even had the almighty power of Wheatus's anthemic teenage dirtbag behind it, and yet it still failed because it fundamentally didn't know how to not suck. Hell, there's even a chance you only recognize any of these clips because of the teenage dirtbag music video itself. The writing is awful, the chemistry between the pair is underused, and Savari's character ends up being mostly unlikable. The fact that it did a fraction of American Pie's business just a year after says it all. Number 7, Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. The good, Silver Linings Playbook. The bad, Serena. Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper have now worked together on a few occasions, but they've not hit the heights of Silver Linings Playbook by some distance. The pair are mesmerizing together in this film, segueing from emotional volatility to vulnerability and never making sideshows of their characters. Both are incredibly brave performances as well, and deserve the Oscar attention that they picked up at the time, which makes the tepid reunion that followed in 2014 for Serena all the more unfortunate. Lawrence is actually on good form in the movie, and Cooper isn't entirely terrible either, but the writing is just woeful and way too twisty, and there's a general air of boredom that is a million miles away from Silver Linings Playbook. It has way too many reasons for audiences not to see it, and sadly, they took them to heart, with the film only making $5 million at the box office. Number 6, Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase. The good, Spies Like Us. The bad, Nothing But Trouble. Spies Like Us is far from a universally adored film, but it does have its charms that are mostly down to the chemistry between leading men Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, who also wrote the script. It has certainly grown in appreciation since its release, with fans far more positive about it now than reviews from the time. It was never going to win any Oscars or anything like that, but the two SNL alumni do manage to pull a few laughs out of the audience, and it was well considered enough to get its own Family Guy homage episode. Nothing But Trouble, though, Aykroyd's directorial debut that reunited the pair would never ever deserve any sort of homage, since it is one of the most single unwatchable gross-out movies ever released. And to make it worse, Chevy Chase himself just goes through the movie like a man who is both apathetic and disgusted at having to be involved at all. It's really not a fun watch. Number 5, Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp, The Good, Sweeney Todd, The Bad, Dark Shadows. When Tim Burton's work comes under consideration, his musical adaptation of The Demon Barber of Fleet Street tends to be overlooked a little, despite how great it is. It's rich in imagination, delights in its darkness, and features some truly brilliant performances by a cast almost universally on great form. At the top of the pile in performance terms are Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp, who both feel like they were made for their roles and who both show great musical ability. They're just a joy to watch together as they dance around the deliciously dark material. But then, flash forward to another Tim Burton project, Dark Shadows, and the old magic just isn't there anymore. The visuals are as you'd expect from Burton, and the characters are well drawn, but the tone is all over the place, and Burton fails to capture the same sort of charm as in Sweeney Todd, and he's never quite able to translate his own affection into something fans could also appreciate. Number 4, Nicholas Winding Refn and Ryan Gosling, The Good, Drive, The Bad, Only God Forgives. Never have two films so close together by the same filmmaker, starring the same lead actor, and using the same principles of character mythology building and approach to writing provided such wildly different results. In Drive, Nicholas Winding Refn's muted fascination with the cult of Ryan Gosling's cool pays off incredibly well, as his gentle romantic indie reveals an engine that is muscular and hilariously draws on exploitation action movies out of absolutely nowhere. Gosling here is in full Steve McQueen mode, saying little but managing to transmit a lot in those few words, and it's easy to absolutely fall into his aura. But then, Winding Refn almost intentionally lashed out against that project with the self-indulgent Only God Forgives, and the results are nothing short of nonsensical and difficult to watch. The adoration of Gosling goes way too far without any substance, and you get the feeling that the director is interested more in fetishization than actual storytelling. Number 3, Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, The Good, 50 First Dates, and The Wedding Singer, The Bad, Blended. Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore have a fairly strong case for being the more modern version of Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, albeit with a few caveats. Sandler, of course, is a lot more goofy and annoying, and Barrymore tends to be a lot more affably loser-like than Ryan ever was. But still, their easy chemistry and how easy it is to root for them puts them in the same bracket. For The Wedding Singer, and in particular 50 First Dates, that chemistry is wonderful to watch, and their romance in both cases is completely spellbinding. There's vulnerability to them both, and genuine laughs to go along with the heart-wrenching stuff. Sadly though, while Blended had its moments, it was almost universally panned, and there's too little around the central pair's chemistry to suggest the filmmakers bothered to think of anything other than just smushing them together and expecting the same results as their past glories. It just doesn't happen, and the film ends up being testament to how well written the other two actually were. Number 2, John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, The Good, Pulp Fiction, The Bad, Basic. John Travolta owes a lot to Quentin Tarantino and Samuel L. Jackson, thanks to the director's decision to cast him alongside Jackson in Pulp Fiction. He might have made some successful movies around the time, like Look Who's Talking, but by the time 1994 had come around, his Saturday Night Fever cool had faded badly. But then in came Tarantino and cast him as Vincent Vega, the coolest dude in all of his movies, and Travolta was suddenly reborn. It helped in no small part, though, that he enjoyed some of Tarantino's most quotable scenes with Jackson, whose volatility matches Vega's drugged smoothness just wonderfully. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of their reunion for the 2003 John McTiernan thriller Basic, which disappears up its own backside with too many plot twists and believes that it's way smarter than it actually is. The great irony is that McTiernan could have enjoyed success if he just let his leading men be the chief focus, but instead he was too invested in the needlessly convoluted story, and the results are just not good. Number 1, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, The Good, Heat, The Bad, Righteous Kill. Obviously, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro were both absolutely brilliant in The Godfather Part 2, but they didn't actually share any screen time together at all, on account of being in entirely different points of the same timeline, so people tend to discount that film from conversations like this. But that can't be said of Heat, which sees both powerhouse actors on great form and together in the same scene. So great they are, in fact, that Heat is essentially marketed still on their joint presence. Just as Martin Scorsese's The Irishman kinda was as well, ahead of its release. This was the first major opportunity to see two pillars of modern Hollywood intensely acting and action together, and the payoff worked incredibly well. That is very much not true of Righteous Kill, however, which is an ordeal hinged on a deceptive twist that undermines the audience's viewing experience, and which seems to have been made in the belief that just putting Pacino and De Niro on the cast list was somehow enough. Everyone saw straight through that when it turned out to be an absolute slog to watch, even with these great men involved. Thankfully though, The Irishman did it a lot better. So that's our list. Want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think of these cinematic duos, and are there any other great ones I missed off here? While you're down there as well, could you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.